Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly show where I get to interview somebody and get a different perspective on their perspective on movies. And this is a special episode as I'm going to be interviewing my guest Adam here about a film. And this is only the second time I've actually gotten to do this on my channel, so I'm excited. Adam, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's nice to be one of your guinea pigs.
All righty. Would you like to shamelessly plug before we jump on in? Or are you ready to talk about some Notorious?
Yeah, look, I guess the only place you can really reach me is Letterboxd, is where I'm most prolific at the moment. It's Kerbryder, Kerbryder. You'll always get something from me most days from there.
Awesome. I know I'm on it pretty regularly, so I always like to see a little banner of all what my friends are watching. And then I also see you on Instagram where you share it. And it's funny because I feel like most people that I see what they put on letterboxes from then they actually share it on Instagram.
I can't share everything on Instagram because it's just embarrassing how many films I watch, honestly. So if I put everything on there, it'd be like I've watched over 120 movies the last 2 months, so it's it's getting a bit much.
You have to become more shameless like myself and just like plop it all out there.
Yeah.
But Letterboxd is great because like especially when there's like a new movie coming out and you get to see what all the different friends are thinking about it. And it's funny because I see my friend Matt in person maybe once or twice, once a month or every other month, and I'm like, oh, Matt saw a movie. It's like you're talking on Letterboxd. I'm like, I gotta talk to him about it. But we're here to talk about one very specific film, and that is Notorious from Alfred Hitchcock. And boy, does this have a impressive trio of actors in it. As we have Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, and Claude Reigns starring in this, how IMDb labels it as a film noir romance thriller from 1946. The daughter of a convicted Nazi spy is asked by American agents to gather information on a ring of Nazi scientists in South America. How far will she have to go to integrate herself with them? Intense and mysterious. But Adam, so what inspired you to want to talk about this film on the show?
Probably a few reasons. If you've seen me on here before, you probably know Hitchcock is my favorite director, and he's made a lot of amazing and classic films that a lot of people know about. And I think that Notorious is one of those brilliant films of his that kind of goes under the radar. Not many people have actually heard about it. So yeah, maybe shed some light on one of his for me, it's his fourth best film. Yeah, so hopefully people get to, I guess, learn about something they maybe have not heard from Hitchcock before.
Absolutely. This and Rebecca were two films where like I was aware of them, especially Rebecca because of that remake that came out recently. But I had never seen it. So this was my first time watching Notorious in preparation for this.
Yes.
And to throw this out there, this film was nominated for 2 Oscars, one for Best Supporting Actor for Claude Rains, and it was also nominated for Original Screenplay. So in terms of my first question, which I feel like this is the most general one, is what are your general thoughts about Notorious?
General thoughts. I probably should go to my letterbox really to give you those, to be honest.
Adam just starts reading directly from his phone.
Yeah, I'll just start quoting. General thoughts are that it is, I think, quietly a masterpiece of filmmaking. I really appreciate the technique that Hitchcock was using for the time. Like, if you can think that this is nearly an 80-year-old movie, and some of the things he's doing with the camera are really insanely great. And not only just the camera, but also the way he blocks, the way he uses his characters on screen. There's a particular scene right near the beginning. We're not really spoiling much, are we? But anyway, it's kind of might be predictable.
We'll talk about specific scenes throughout the film because there's a lot of interesting actual scenes put together that I think are good to talk about. But go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So there's a scene where Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman are making out on the balcony, and the way they are positioned with each other, and then they walk back into the room. When I was watching a documentary about Hitchcock, apparently Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman hated that. They were really uncomfortable the way they had to move with each other because it just wasn't natural. But Hitchcock designed it that way for the viewer, and which is what Hitchcock's view about actors were that actors were just like cattle. They do what I tell them to do because that's the way I want to make the film. That was a direct quote, like actors are cattle.
Sure, that wasn't from Stanley
so
Kubrick.
Yeah, might have been. Yeah.
There's a few.
He didn't treat them very well either.
That did their thing, to say the least.
But that's why they considered some of the best too, right? Because I guess they were right. So yeah. Yeah, but anyway, there's just some really interesting. There is one particular scene which I've talked about with you before, where we start from the inside top of the stairs, and he focuses on a key, and there's a camera switch from the balcony, and it's really, really inventive type of stuff. Like I think it's a film really that kind of maybe changed some filming techniques that we even see today. So yeah.
Yeah, because I was sitting here watching this yesterday and just thinking, this film's from 1946. Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
it's bonkers. I'm so glad you watched it.
Yeah, because I'm glad that I did. And I immediately added to my to get list on Amazon that beautiful Criterion cover with the hand and the key right on the back. I'm just
Isn't it? It's great.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah.
And because I've been doing this other project of mine, which has just been like a pet project just for me, really, is this journey through cinema. And I'm like on 1906 films. And, I'm slowly seeing film evolve. And, it's still barely. And there's very, 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 very few close-ups. Because, that's just not how film was back then. It's like you have a stage, unless the whole entire film's a close-up, and then it just kind of sticks that way. But watching this, I'm just like I'm trying to think of other films that, this particular year, I think it was It's a Wonderful Life came out this year, and thinking about other films I've seen from around this time, and there's just so many dynamic camera uses and shots, and especially close-ups, and how the camera follows certain things, and how the storytelling is through the camera work is so impressive. All you have to see is a cup of tea. And that's so much.
It's a nice little trivia on IMDb about that, actually. When you're talking about shots, and I still don't feel like giving you a general answer. But there's a shot at the start where Bergman is drunk and Cary's walking towards her, but she's upside down. So it's from her point of view. And I don't know if that had ever been done before in film. I haven't seen it in any films before 46. Not that I haven't seen that many from that era, but enough. But it was just impressive, even how the camera moved and tilted, how her head would have moved as she was following. It's very, very impressive.
All things considered, this is an incredible technical achievement, this film. You could see why Hitchcock was pushing the limits of filmmaking for decades after this too. Now, I know you alluded to this with a number, but where do you feel like this specifically kind of lands in terms of Hitchcock's filmography and its importance?
Well, for the reasons we've just discussed, very, very high, because not only, for me, it is ranked fourth on my Hitchcock list and I've seen, I think there's 28 films or something in that list, and I know he's directed a lot more than 28, but so it's kind of an indicator of how great I do think it is. It's probably I've probably given it more stars than I have films above that, but I kind of rate my rankings on rewatchability and blah blah blah. And I've only seen Notorious twice now, and it did go up half a star on my second view. Sorry, what was the question?
Just kind of where this kind of fits into Hitchcock's.
Where it fits in. It fits high because, sorry, I did have a point there. We were talking about the technical brilliance of the film. It's beyond that. It's also incredibly well told story. It's a great story. It's so tense the entire way through. So it's just story. It's technical brilliance, and it's also storytelling masterwork. I think it's just so brilliant, and I'm probably pushing it up my list as I'm talking to you about it. Honestly.
That's the wonderful thing about talking about movies. You're just like, wow,
yeah,
I must have really loved this movie. And I've definitely had a couple of those films where I'm just like, I watched it once, hadn't watched it for years, and then just talking to somebody about it, I'm like, did I love this film this much?
Yeah.
And I have like 3 off the top of my head that are those kind of movies. The Hustler's definitely one of them. That became like one of my favorite films just because like I watched this movie once, but I keep talking about it with people.
I need to see that. Yeah, I need to see that.
Those kinds of things. Now, one thing that I found very interesting is because like, and this is right off of the synopsis, is it's dealing with the like that word Nazis pop up. And what do you think of the usage of, you know, like the Nazi situation and post-Holocaust, post-World War II as like a context for this film, which when it really boils down to, it's kind of just a love triangle. But Nazis.
Well, it is, but it's a good. Could you use the Nazis as a MacGuffin for this love triangle? I mean, possibly, but I mean, it was also shot. It was a 1946 film, so it was obviously shot at post World War II. So it's obviously very fresh in people's minds at that time. So why not give it that context and show that maybe the Nazis haven't, just because the war's finished doesn't mean the Nazis are finished either, right? So they're hidden away in South America, which a lot of them did run to South America. That's fact. Like some of them were caught in Argentina, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I think it definitely suits the time period in which it was made. So yeah, I think it's, I mean, what else? Look, I have not thought about it, but I don't know what else, what other options there might have been.
I found it kind of interesting because like it is so fresh, and like I don't know the context in terms of like how many films, like when was the next other film that kind of tackled the, because like when did the Judgment of Nuremberg come out, like the post World War II ramifications of World War II, and like I know other films where there's been references to like South American Nazis, you know. First thing that pops in my head is like X-Men First Class, with that incredibly intense, brutal scene where Magneto chases Nazis to South America. And also I'm a fan of Archer, just thinking about how Krieger's a Hitler clone. But you know, like this kind of thing where this must have been really fresh. And I find that very bold of Hitchcock to be taking on a story like that. And
away,
it's Hitchcock, so of course he's that bold. Because he had always pushed limits in terms of what he was doing in terms of filmmaking, and I just found it interesting. Now, obviously,
is this also his first US film as well? Like, it was his first US production with O. Selznick?
That's a good question.
I think it might be, because he wasn't known as he wasn't Hitchcock then, right? Like, he wasn't the name that he became. Like, the 50s is where he really spread wide, right? So
because I'm looking like, just for some context, because like Rope came out in 48, so that was a couple years after this. And I've seen a lot of his earlier films, which I might at some point take it out. I have a early Hitchcock collection, which is very interesting. It's a lot of like those really early films, but he made like Sabotage in 36 was a big one. And
the 39 Steps is one of my favorites of his too.
The Lady Vanishes,
I think that was a
38, Rebecca,
that's
Foreign Correspondent.
All British productions.
Shadow of a Doubt. Which was in 43, which I have a podcast with Rowan that I talked about that. on that podcast
Okay.
that we did with him. So gotten some 40s Hitchcock in the past couple months. But it is interesting that like this really feels like a big old Hollywood kind of movie because, and I think this is a nice
Mm.
segue,
Mm.
Grant and Bergman.
I know, yeah.
So thoughts.
Just superb. Look, performance-wise, Ingrid Bergman is spectacular. I think she's so great in this. Cary Grant, I don't think Cary Grant was ever a brilliant actor, but he's a brilliant movie star, if that makes sense. Like within this film, he goes through a bit of a gambit of emotions, kind of, but he's angry a lot because he has to give up the woman he loves for the sake of the greater good. And the way he switches his mood, like he talks a lot through gritted teeth, but it's just not as believable as I want it to be, you know, the way he's performing. So but those two together, like it's Cary Grant, like he is probably, he is a fan. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say. It's hard for me to put into words on, actually. Like he's a superstar for many reasons.
Well, because you know we have actors today that are great movie stars, but like people aren't going to be like they're not the world's greatest actors. And
no,
I know I don't know who made this comparison, but I've heard the comparison to him and George Clooney before. But I feel like George Clooney, at least to me, and maybe this is because I haven't seen as many Cary Grant films as I've seen George Clooney films, I feel like he's shown more range in terms of like being like, because like films like Descendants or something like that, it's just like there's some great acting going on there, and it's not just like him being a suave movie star, but he is that. You watch Ocean's 11, that's Danny Ocean.
Oh yeah, coolest of the cool for sure. I think George Clooney is 100% a better actor than Cary Grant, and I think the comparison's made because of that really dark tan skin that they both have, and they both have similar features. But I saw a review on Letterboxd from Aaron Dicer. It was I think it was with The Grey Man, even, where he compares Ryan Gosling is trying to be the new Cary Grant, and I couldn't fault that opinion, because I think Gosling he can play those serious roles, but he's also got great comedic sense behind him, which Cary Grant did as well. Like you see Bringing Up Baby for Cary Grant, and like honestly, it's hard to find a funnier movie in my opinion than Bringing Up Baby. But yeah, I really like that comparison between Gosling and Grant.
That is very interesting because, like, I've seen His Girl Friday, I've seen Arsenic Anonymous, and it's like very fast talking, kind of.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know if you read my review of His Girl Friday, but I said this must have been the fattest script ever produced for a 90-minute film because there's so much talking. It's just blah, 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 blah. That's so great.
Like, they don't stop. These lines are just flying at you.
It's something you need to watch it 5 times to catch it all.
But it's interesting seeing him in his Hitchcock films because even with like North by Northwest, he isn't that like fast talk kind of thing. He is that like just
suave. Hitchcock reining him in, probably, I think.
And what was very interesting, because I made a comment to my wife within a couple minutes of watching this, I'm like, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of Ingrid Bergman films because I'm sitting here like, I don't feel like I've seen her like before.
I've seen her a couple of times.
Because like, I feel like most of the times I've seen her, she's a lot softer in terms of like a character. And like, I'm thinking Casablanca, but like right off the bat here, there felt like a more of a strength and a presence in this performance. And I loved it. I'm sitting here like, wow, she grabbed my attention like that. And
I don't know if you've seen Gaslight. She's really great in Gaslight.
I have, and I really want to rewatch it because I haven't watched it in years. But that was another one, and I remember watching that being like, is that Angela Lansbury? Who's like 20 years old.
I know. She's kind of cute too, right?
But like, Ingrid Bergman's so great in here, and they have such great chemistry in this film. And let's talk about our third wheel too, Mr. Claude Reigns.
Yeah.
Who apparently got the Oscar love
He's awesome
for this one.
Well, I can probably see why, but it's weird that Bergman didn't, but he did, because I mean he is pretty menacing actually.
Yep.
Like he's kind of like a good Bond villain, if you boil it down. Like he just has creepy presence about him.
Now I'm like, was he alive in the 60s? Could he have been a Bond villain? They missed out.
Gonna look him up. Died in 1967.
Could have happened. But like, I feel like Claude Rains is one of the best character actors from this era, and just every movie that I've seen him in, he steals every scene he's in. And Casablanca is absolutely amazing. Obviously,
yes,
he had some leading performances in Universal horror films like The Invisible Man, and even supporting ones, like he was in The Wolfman. He was Lon Chaney Jr.'s dad in the film, but like he just has another layer to him, and like his interactions with it's his mother, right? That's in like this film.
Yes. Yeah. What a creepy relationship.
I'm just sitting there like, I feel so uncomfortable with these people.
Yeah. And it's a bit weird.
And it's still 1946, and I don't know like how far Hitchcock was going to push things, but like there's always this strange undercurrent with certain characters in Hitchcock films. I'm like, in like 2022 eyes, you could just be sitting there like, were they trying to allude to something here? And which would have flew right over people's heads back in the 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'd think so.
Well, I feel like most people, because I feel like most people would be like, I don't even want to imagine that. And like now it's 2022, I'm like, I've seen everything in movies, and you're just like, that's interesting. But
I feel like maybe he was doing her bidding. Like she was kind of maybe the leader of this behind the curtain.
Yeah,
I reckon.
There definitely seemed to be some strong strings there, and it's such an interesting dynamic between these three actors in the film. And I think it's interesting because like I saw, trying to remember where I saw it. It might have been like some reviews and stuff, and it's like, who loved her more? Like, did Reigns' character really love her more than Grant's character? But it's like, he's a Nazi. He's not a great man. And obviously goes to dark lengths to try to fix things once you get to a certain point in this film. But I do think like this film is sold on Hitchcock and three amazing actors that are really anchoring the film.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was very well cast. Very well cast. Just while we're talking about his mother, fun fact that the woman who plays his mother, she's actually only 4 years older than Claude Reigns in real life. So that was interesting.
Claude Reigns, I feel like, was playing younger than he actually is. I'm just like, this is like the oldest looking 40-year-old or like 30-something-year-old.
That was so bad. They never ate preservatives like we do today. That's why most people look younger than they are, because I think it's just the stuff in our food. But back in those days, those films, like, it was always, and it's probably still leaks over in today's films, but there's really age inappropriate relationships. There was always 22-year-old girls with 40-odd-year-old women. Almost every film, because I look through like the actresses who's playing opposite, and I see he was born in 1919, but she was born in 1941. I'm like, what? That's just not right.
It's North by Northwest. Because like, how old was Ava Marie Saint in that movie?
A lot younger than Cary Grant.
A lot younger.
20 years at least, yeah.
And even James Mason wanted to be all over her too. And just like, how old's he? And it's very true. Because like, that still happens today. It's just like you see those the kind of things Woody Allen films, where it's just like
Yeah, yeah,
decades. It's like,
yeah.
dude, I get it.
Or
You're writing
Clint
for
Eastwood films, from
yourself.
what I hear.
It's like, dude, I get you're writing for yourself, but like, can you at least have your female leads here be like in the same like quarter
Yeah,
century as
yeah,
the male leads in this movie? But
yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic. Now, I know you
Mm,
talked about a couple of these already, but I just got really blown away by the shots in this film. But what were some of the
yeah.
like those technical achievements or like those shots that really stood out to you in this film?
Yeah. So I guess the two that I've mentioned already, the focus from the top of the in-stairs down to that key, even though the shot misses, it's not centered.
Mm-hmm.
I know he'd probably want to do that again if he probably would have wanted to do that again, but it's still amazing. And obviously that opening scene. But honestly, the scenes that get me the most, and that I think about when I'm talking to you, honestly, the shots of those champagne bottles at the party. It's like no one has the right to provide that much suspense from just brief shots of a key and some bottles of champagne. It's
Yep.
just not. I don't know that I've ever seen that since. I don't think I've seen that in a film since, or if I have, I haven't been able to pay that much attention to it because it's just phenomenal how you just start tightening up when you're watching. Oh man, he's down to 6 bottles. We're down to 4 bottles, and
It's
it's
like,
just yeah,
is he gonna come looking for
yeah,
them?
yeah, yeah. And then even there's a shot after that where Kerry and Ingrid they kiss, and he's looking at them through the
Yeah.
door. But there's just that shot of them. I mean, it's an outside shot, but we're seeing between them through the glass in the door to Reigns on the stairs with his servant man or whatever, and it's just. I mean, that's a great shot in itself
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, Hitchcock really knew how to put people in the film. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think my last review. So sorry, I think my review I wrote because I watched it Wednesday night here was that at that time Hitchcock was actually making films where everyone else just seemed to be putting stage plays on screen. Basically, he was making grand cinema. I thought,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think because I talked about this on one of my podcasts, but like The Great Train Robbery was one of the first films that had both indoor and outdoor shots in it. And
right,
like you actually
right,
cut between things and different
yeah,
places. And because cinema was really limited at one point, and I feel
yeah,
like Hitchcock is just like, doesn't have to be, just like flip the
yep.
table, tear down the wall, and just like, I'm going to do what I want. And
That's why it was so great. Yeah,
that montage of shots between the champagne, the bartender who's like
yeah, yeah,
starting to sweat, just like
yeah,
running out of bottles, and
yeah,
running down into the cellar, and you're just like, oh no, oh no, is he gonna catch them? And that
mm-hmm.
suspense, and that whole entire sequence, and yes, that shot too, such a great reveal of because Claude Reigns' character is not an idiot. He's been picking
No,
up and
no,
seeing throughout that party, and we'll definitely get back to that, but like through that party of those two, chatting and stuff like that. But that was it. That was a turning point in the
yeah,
film where it's just like, I've been fooled. Something's going on. And then they try to
yeah,
write, it's like, no,
yeah,
I kissed her. I forced myself on her. It's like, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sure.
Yeah, he knows better, and
Yeah,
he takes action,
sure
mental action.
does.
Yeah,
Now, in terms of just some kinds of questions that popped in my head, it's just like, let's pretend that Claude Rains' character isn't a Nazi, and she's doing this for like doing this because she's having like the government have her do this. if you're kind of like taking a step back and really thinking of this from like that romantic triangle kind of situation, who do you think she should have wound up with?
He carried Grant for sure. Devlin, definitely. I think he loved her more, and I think she loved him more as well. Because she was upset when he didn't fight for her not to take the mission on. So yeah, I think that's pretty clear cut in my opinion.
I know one thing, like on this first watch, something that I was thinking about through part of this is like, how genuine is Devlin? But you know, there's a certain point where you're just like, yeah, he is. Like you can tell, like he's tortured by the fact that he has to make certain decisions. And
yes,
obviously the whole entire third act of this film really frames like what's really going on in terms of their relationship, and obviously what's going on in terms of their relationship with Claude Reigns' character. Which
I mean, so when we were talking about Carrie's performance before, how I was saying how he's always talking through gritted teeth and he's angry, like he was pushing her away, like I guess like John Lithgow did in Harry and the Hendersons to Bigfoot, like, because that's for the better and get away, just to
like, no,
all of us
go away, we don't want you.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. Maybe not exactly what it's like, but it's the same principle.
No. We don't want you.
Like he even says some mean things to her and stuff, so she takes it on because he's like, this is his job. His job is to, root out these Nazis and whatever. So, what comes first, the job or love?
That's every time it's like you're in a relationship, it's like, are you balancing that with your work? And that translates into this, and obviously this one's a little bit more complicated than most relationships, but still it has that kind of idea of like my duty to my country, or like I really want to be with her. But
and he's really conflicted. Obviously, it's and Hitchcock does that well. Like it's a really good script, actually. We haven't really spoken about that, but
Well, and I think this was kind of leads in my next question is like, obviously there's romance, there's espionage here. How well do you feel like they balance those two things in this film?
Well, considering how I feel about the film, I'd have to say very. Like it's very well balanced, because I think it is one of those really complete cinematic experiences. Like you do get the romance at the start, like these, and back in those days, those classic films, people were really quick to fall in love. Like they just meant, oh, we're in love, let's get married. Like that's kind of how it works. So you kind of you suspend that disbelief for those circumstances. But then there's the conflict that comes in where she has to work for the country. He doesn't want to, but has to let her. So he's mean to her, pushes her away. He's angry about it. She's angry that she doesn't want him to stay. That's that he pushes her away basically, and wants her to go and be with this guy, and obviously have to have sex with him and marry him and blah blah blah. So I mean that, and then there's a bit of the backlash there, how she's looked at by his superiors. Like, basically calls her a strumpet, and he gets really fired up over that, but controls it. And I mean, there's a lot. It's a good question. Long story short, too long didn't read. I think it's very well balanced. Yeah.
Well, I think it's so deeply embedded with each other that I feel like it's so well written that neither of them would work without the other. Because the whole entire crux is you have to do this romance. Like there would be no movie without this romantic triangle, because it's like you're being forced into this situation to fall in love with this man and investigate them. And you have that situation. And which is really interesting that I asked this question, because like I wrote these a couple days ago, or not a couple of days ago. I watched this yesterday. These days bleed together. But I wrote these as I was watching the film. And I just watched this film, Eiffel, which you would think is about the creation of the Eiffel Tower, which kind of is, except it's mostly a melodramatic romance. And I'm like,
oh, right. Okay.
I'm sitting here and like, that did not balance there. It was like
Well,
90,
yeah.
it was like 90% romance. And then it's, oh, wait a minute. I was building this giant structure too. And I'm just like, and it wasn't a good romance either. Like, it wasn't like a well-written romance or stuff. I'm just like, ugh. Like sitting there watching this movie, I'm like, there's 15 more minutes left. That's not even that much time, but I wish it was right now.
Nothing worse when you're watching the clock, waiting for it to finish.
This never felt that way, and it felt like it progressed so naturally through things. And
yeah.
Once we get towards the end, we'll talk a little bit of some more spoilery kinds of things, which we'll warn you. But I have an actual question here, but I'm going to ask it in this way first. Why is this party scene not one of the most famous scenes in cinema?
Dude, I know. And that's, and when we're talking about balancing, it's that party scene that helps balance a lot of that out of in the film. But yeah, 100%. Why isn't it? This is goes back to your first question. Why did I want to talk about this film? It's because of things like this. Like, it's really underseen. It's underappreciated. And I don't know why. Because that party scene is phenomenal. Like, it is really a great sequence. Even when you see Kerry comes in late, then he finds her. They go sit on that little park bench inside and talk in code while he's across the other side of the room. Then we see their point of view seeing him, and his point of view seeing them, and then he creepily walks over to them with that little shit-eating grin on his face, like just pretending like he's not paranoid as hell. And it's just, and then obviously we get to them going downstairs and those champagne bottles. It's so well put together.
Well, and that's the thing too. And one thing about Claude Reigns' performance is so much of his performance is a performance too, because he's trying to not let on that he's really worried about this dynamic going on.
He's the paranoid husband.
He keeps his cool so well, and that's Claude Reigns until he doesn't keep his cool, but we'll talk about that. But it's such an interesting sequence, and even starting like slightly before the party with the whole key, that scene is, and like it's the cover of the Criterion box, and like the whole hands, and I'm just like, how the camera captured that, and like her quick thinking, and the whole trying to hide the key that she obviously stole, and that whole entire sequence through the party is just top-notch filmmaking. And it's just like, why isn't this in film classes? Why isn't this talked about? It's because Hitchcock, and he has so many other films that have become so. And it's interesting because, like, you're right, come the 50s, and like he had his Hitchcock Presents stuff, and you have Vertigo and Rear Window and Psycho and The Birds and North by Northwest.
Darling for Murder.
I'm like,
Darling for Murder,
all these films that so many of them, like, you see in film classes. Like, I watched, when I had a film class in high school, we watched Vertigo, and we watched Psycho. Because, we watched those things, and I wound up doing North by Northwest on my own for a paper. Because I went to the library, and that was the only Hitchcock that they had. And I was
really?
Happy. And I was happy that it turned out that way, because it's a great film.
I think Psycho and Vertigo are probably his two most overrated. Maybe apart from The Birds, which I do need to watch The Birds again. But I mean, Psycho is amazing. Like, it's because of, well, I know we're not here to talk about Psycho, but I can't remember the actor's name. What's his name? The guy who plays Bates. Anthony Perkins. Oh my God, he's so fucking great in that film. Like, I was really underappreciated the first time I saw that, and the second time I was like, wow, he's amazing. But Again, Vertigo is something else I need to watch again because you've talked me into it because I
Yeah.
just thought it was kind of dumb when I first saw it.
I'm not the biggest fan of the birds, honestly. Like I struggled to
No,
get through that first hour of that movie because I'm like, I'm not
right.
invested in this romance at all.
Yeah, I was really young when I watched that, so I do need to watch that again.
I'm like, Tippi Hedren, very charismatic actress. Rod Taylor, really love Rod Taylor from the Time Machine and everything. No, I just didn't buy this. And I'm like, where's the birds? When are the birds going to start attacking? And it takes like an hour in this 2-hour film.
Really?
But then when it hits it, then it's just like, oh, this is a whole other movie. I know that's the point, but like, here's the thing. It's enthralling in Psycho because she steals the money. There's actual mystery. And then bam, is a whole other movie. No, I didn't buy this romance, and then I have to wait an hour to start seeing birds mess up people. But this film is interesting because I am invested in this romance. And then when halfway through this film, when we get to the party, and then the third act of this film, I'm like, oh my. And then it starts like building up that tension and everything. And it really works here.
Oh no, we'll get to that. Sorry.
But I feel like we have gotten up to the point where I've avoided asking questions about things that would really start spoiling this movie. So if you don't want to hear anything else, thank you for watching and come back later. But spoiler alert. So you're warned. There you go. So
switch off, go watch the film and come back.
Yeah. So now we're at the third act of this film where I feel like this film escalates from a conversation between Sebastian and his mother to the end of this film.
Yes.
Try to remember back to your first time watching this. It's like, how did you react? And like, what was your reaction when that conversation happened? You started to realize where this film was going to go.
I don't know that I can answer that. Honestly, I was probably just too invested and not thinking about how I felt, and I was probably just like, okay, so this is going to happen. But you know, it's a film, so you know it's going to work out for the best, especially in those days.
Yeah.
Although kind of does, kind of doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Just when you knew what was happening when she's drinking the coffee and she's getting headaches. So, man, it's not hard to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to hear your thoughts on that because I'm not sure.
I remember, like watching this yesterday for the first time, just being like, because, it can't be just going all perfectly fine the whole movie because, like, obviously then you would have no tension in the film. And then that conversation, things started being like, things are going to get real bad real quick, I feel like. And I started feeling like this real sense of dread from the film.
Yeah.
Between that conversation between Claude Reigns and the actress who plays his mother. And then you have those shots of like, they're just sitting, having like tea or coffee and just like Hitchcock staring in on that cup. And you're just like, there's something in the cup. And because like, Sebastian's like, we're going to take care of it. I'm like, well, that sounds foreboding. And then what's going on. I feel like Bergman's performance goes to a different level at this point because her playing that got me good.
Yeah, she's really good. There's some really good I'm talking about the filmmaking techniques before. That coffee cup right in screen. Apparently that's actually like an oversized coffee cup he had made especially, so they would both stay in focus. So it's actually like a really large thing. There's lots of good trivia on IMDb about this film, actually. It's a good question to ask, though. I think, but I don't know how I felt. I was just like, okay, this is going to happen. We'll see how we get out of it.
Like my big last question is, how satisfying did you feel the conclusion of this film was?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because that whole walk down the stairs, I kind of felt like, what's going to happen here? Like, why is this a hard time for him? But then I realized, like, why it's a hard time for him.
Mhm.
Like, well, not to shoot Cary Grant or not to ask for their help type of thing. So, I think it's a really good wind up. I think it's a really good ending. Yeah, without trying to give a lot away, but yeah, look, I think it's really well done. Like there's that Sunset Boulevard walk down the stairs at the
Yep.
end, and
Even before
it's,
Sunset Boulevard.
yeah, and it's really slow and deliberate because he's Hitchcock built that tension. Like every step is just deliberate, slow, yeah, considered. Yeah, probably after we switch off, I'm probably going to come up with some really great answers. But for now, I don't know. I just really loved it. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
watching this, and really, the film really solidifies in that moment how strongly Devlin feels about her. And obviously, like
Oh, yeah.
he goes into a jackal's den just to be like, I'm gonna get her
Mm-hmm.
out of here. And
Yeah.
this is where I feel like Claude Rains is the most interesting he is in the whole entire movie because he is losing his cool. And
Yes.
the fear's setting in, paranoia's setting in, and I love
Mm-hmm.
that shot of
Yeah.
him left alone outside the car and just what's waiting for him in the background of that shot. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah. That's beautiful because it's like Cary Grant, because he's basically saying, help me. And Cary Grant's like, screw you, Jack. Like you tried to ruin my life. And
goodbye.
blah, blah, blah.
Locks car door.
Yep.
Drives away.
Bye, Felicia. That's just like, yeah, you'll be all right.
Exactly. And it has a very like 40s, 50s, 60s ending where it's just like, bam, credits.
Yeah.
It's like,
And that's beautiful. I love that.
Because it's not like a long drawn out shot. It's not needlessly like, let's pull this all out. It's just like, there it is. We know what happens to Sebastian.
Yep.
We know where, our two leads are going. That's the end. And I did feel like it closed out an incredible third act of a film. Because that's how I really felt was like this third act of this movie. And even like it nails all of it, to be fair. But like the end of the second act with that party into the third act of this film, this goes to a whole other level for me. And
it really does.
I felt like this was the perfect kind of ending to really ratchet up all that tension and have that blow off of tension.
Yeah.
Because
then make the audience decide.
Exactly. And like you have to have some relief of tension. Because like if you're like the credits ending, you're just like especially at that point, like I can't imagine because filmmakers today challenge those conventions and expectations. A24 movies. But like this, like you're expected to have some kind of payoff at the end. And it does. And it blows off that tension and Hitchcock.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of wrapping things up, Adam, do you have any last minute thoughts or anything that you wanted to say?
There's one great line that I think his mother says. I think it's his mother. She says, "You are protected by the enormity of your stupidity." And I thought that was just probably the best line from the film. I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up. I think that's just a great line. Mm-hmm. That was his mother to Sebastian, right? Yeah. I wrote that down. I just thought, that's then under my notes. And so begins the poisoning.
And then so begins.
Yeah. I just thought that was a really great line. That was obviously part of that argument. But no, sorry, nothing else to add. So I'm just kind of delving through my recesses and I can't find anything. It's just a fantastic film.
And hopefully after watching this, people start checking this out more, and this becomes one of those rewatched and talked about and taught Hitchcock films. Because
yeah,
if I ever taught a film class, I'm like, it shows so much in this movie, and it balances so many things well. Yeah. And I'm very happy that you picked this, and because you gave me a choice. You gave me an option of two things.
Yes.
I'm definitely glad I went with this one, and maybe we'll do the other one at some point in the future. But this felt more fresh and interesting to take because, you know, the other was Pulp Fiction, right? And it's just like,
yes, it was.
So
I just kind of need an excuse to watch Tarantino again, but I'm glad we chose this for sure. This is a phenomenal film.
Well, we'll make that excuse soon. So when we make another episode. But this time, hopefully you all enjoyed our chat and interview here about Notorious. And hopefully you go check it out. And also a whole bunch of other classic Hitchcock, which I know some of them are hard to find. And I got very lucky that I was gifted a box set that looks like it's old. Like, this does not look like this was a new box set. Like, this was probably like an early DVD, like early 2000s kind of thing. But
there are a lot of free ones. Like, YouTube actually has this. Is Notorious is free on YouTube, as is the 39 Steps, The Lady Vanishes, all three fantastic movies. I think Charade also, you can see Charade everywhere because it ran out of its public domain. So it's a public domain film now.
Or you could spend a bunch of money getting a fancy, beautiful cover on Criterion Collection. And
I have it. Yeah. I will be for Notorious.
I will be getting that. Next time they have one of the Criterion sales. That will be one of my half-off purchases.
Get that. I don't get that in Australia. It's $46 on Amazon here, and I'm like, I'm going to wait.
That's terrible.
Which $46 Australian is probably like $60, 60 American dollars, I reckon. 46. Yeah, probably at least.
Oh, yeah. It's a thing, especially in like film nerd community where it's just like, oh my God, Barnes and Noble's half off Criterion channel.
I know. I've seen YouTube videos of it, and I'm so jealous. It's just ludicrous. Yeah, I wish we had that.
Just gonna have to get somebody to buy a whole bunch and ship it to you, or make a trip. Just to.
I actually thought of reaching out to Aaron to do that because I only ship to the Canada and the US on the actual Criterion website. It's really frustrating.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. What a bunch of a-holes. Hey.
I mean, I can get them from. There is a website here, a UK website, where I can get some from, but not all of them. So Notorious isn't on their website. But I recently got a few Criterions. I got Okja, which I was stoked about. Give me a physical copy of that.
Screw you, Netflix. I want an actual copy of this.
Yeah, well, I'm canceling my Netflix. It's gone. Like, I'm over it.
We'll see how long that lasts, and then hopefully Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't murder HBO Max. As they
I've heard that.
That's a whole entire other
things
conversation.
Are changing there.
But so Adam, thank you as always for coming on.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. It's always great to talk to you.
And thank all of you for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.